Are you interested in learning how to get your metallics to float to the surface of your resin art? Let me show you how I go about it, and I have some other tips that I'm happy to tell you about along the way. Stay tuned. Hi everybody, welcome back to Moonkusser Art, and I'm Janet, and we're going to do some more resin work today. I fiddled around with this canvas outside. I had a really nice day the other day, so I was out in the backyard doing some trials on techniques. I used, this was a old canvas that I had lying around. I had done an acrylic pour on it. I didn't like it, but you know, keep it around. So I had some leftover resin from another project, so I put a nice clear coat over top of that and let that cure, and then I took it outside and gave it a quick sanding with 150 grit sandpaper to scratch that surface up a little bit. And then I started playing around with some spray paints and just spraying on and, you know, getting some different techniques. So let me zoom you in a little bit and I'll show you what we've got going on here and what we're going to be doing. All right, so let's talk about this surface first. So I hope you guys can see it. I'll tilt it a little bit, try to make it a little bit easier to see, but I've got some interesting patterns here in the spray paint. And basically what I did was I would mist the canvas with some isopropyl alcohol. I believe I was using my 91% on that. So I would mist an area and then I would do a light spritz with my spray paints. These were all metallic spray paints, a variety of different ones. Some of them were Rustoleum, some were another brand. I'll have to put all that information in the box for you guys, but you can see I got different techniques, or I shouldn't say, different effects from the different paints, and just built up and played around with it outside. And yeah, so it's interesting and it makes for a great background. So we're going to be using that. It's all dry, hard to the touch, so I'm not worried about that. I picked out some colors that I want to work with. This is a Artisue Metallic Blue, and I like it a lot, but it really doesn't have too much going on in there, but I think it'll be set off really nicely with the gold and the black. So I'll be using the Resin Metallic Powder Gold. That is a type of makeup that you can order through Amazon. Boy, it just looks like liquid metal when you mix it up. So I'm going to be using that, and I'll also be using FlowArt resin pigment. This is their black, and it's a really nice, intense, dark black. So that should be going well. If I mix up my Artisue blue steel, whoops, that's the blue steel. If I am mixing it and decide that I want to make it more blue, I'm going to throw in a little bit of the Bombay Blue India ink. So I've got that handy. Everything is ready to go, and let's get started. I'm going to mix up some resin. All right, I want to talk to everybody for just a moment about measuring your resin. The resin that I'm using today is a 1-to-1 ratio. So 1-to-1 in resin means you're going to be mixing by volume. Now, I get my volume by using plastic cups on a scale. I zero out my scale, and then I use water in my cups, and I measure out. I'm going to be using a total of 15 ounces here. So I have a mark at 7.5 fluid ounces of water, And then I have a mark for 15 fluid ounces of water. And that's how I mark out to get my equal amounts, because water measured twice is going to be at the same weight no matter where it's going to be at. So it's going to give me my equal volumes. So if I was using, let's say, a measuring cup like you would use for baking, and I measured out 1 cup of water and put it into this cup, I could make my mark, and then I would do another 1 cup of water, and I would come at that amount. So it's important to understand that epoxy resin and the hardener, they have 2 different weights. So if you were to try to put this cup on the scale, zero at your scale, measure out 1 and say, oh, well, that's 7.5 ounces, and then measure out the other one at 7.5 ounces, it's not going to be by volume. It's going to be by the weight. And you don't want to do that. You want to measure by volume. So I hope that it makes it clear. So I've got my marks for my watermarks, and I have my hardener in here. I always start with my hardener in the cup first. It's going to be more fluid, so it's easier to scrape it off of the sides of the cup and combine the 2 components. The epoxy resin is very thick, very honey-like, and if I were to have that in the cup first, I run the risk of having it still on the sides of my cup. So my recommendation is always start with your hardener in your cup first and pour your epoxy resin into the hardener straight down the middle. That'll push the hardener around the sides. And there it goes, right into the middle. So you can see that the epoxy resin is just going right down to the bottom of my cup. And I'm just going to go all the way up to my measurement. And I'm going to be precise. And that's it. Okay, so now I'm going to begin combining my resin. And I'm very careful to run the whole length of the cup with my popsicle stick. Now this is a very thick resin, so I'm going to stir a little bit on the slower side to try to reduce the number of bubbles. This one does not like to release the bubbles. So I'm scraping down the side, going all the way around, and push it towards the middle. Now I'm going to go around. So I'm just going to mix for 3 minutes. All right, so that's pretty much it. You can see that as I mixed the resin, it started out cloudy, but now it is clear. So that's a good indicator. I timed myself, so it's at 3 minutes. Now this resin gives me a working time of approximately 40 minutes. And that includes the time that I need to mix up my color. And that looks great. Okay, so let me mix up my colors and we'll come back. All right, we're ready to get going on the good stuff here. So I'm putting on my full face mask respirator, and I'm laying down a clear coat of the resin across the entire canvas. And then I use that little plastic tool and finish up with my hand around the edge to ensure good coverage. And then I give it a quick flash with the propane torch to pop any bubbles. Again, this is a very thick resin and it holds a lot of bubbles. So I'm trying to give a lot of thought to the placement of my color since I have such a busy background that I put on using those spray paints. I apologize for not filming the background, but I'll try to do that again in another video and show you how I go about that. Now here I'm going to be using that Artisue Metallic Blue Steel. I ended up not adding any of the Bombay India ink to it. I was satisfied with the color of blue, and I'm going to put that right up against the black, and I'm going to grab my torch and my heat gun. I have the nozzle tip on my heat gun. The heat gun is set on a medium heat setting and on the high setting for blowing. So having that clear coat down on the surface of the canvas allows me to use that nozzle tip and really blow that color pool across the surface of the canvas, and it spreads out really nicely. Now here's a really good spot where it just blows right through. And you'll be seeing some smoke coming off of this piece. Again, it has um, a real thick consistency to it, and that sends up a lot of smoke when I'm working it. There goes some right there. Safety is really important. So make sure you have good ventilation in your room. If you're making the resin flash by using the torch and the heat gun and increasing the heat on that resin, you're going to get some smoke. And I've got a fan going, and again, I've got that respirator on, and I'm trying to be as careful as possible. All right, I'm ready to start introducing that Mayron Gold. I had batched it up in the resin, and then right before I started to pour it out here on the canvas, I added several drops of 99% alcohol. Now, try that out. If you haven't given that a try in a metallic powder, it does a couple of things. It's going to help to combine the powder into the resin itself. And I find that it works nicely to give a little bit more effects from those metallics. Um, I go heavy-handed when I'm adding the powder to the resin. For me, that means it's going to have a lot more of the metallic actually floating to the surface and really give it that spark that I like to get that flash from the metallic. So it's a great thing to do. And again, still using that nozzle tip to drive the resin. It's important to change the way you put the puddles down, or at least I like to do it while I'm working on a piece. Otherwise, it all seems too similar. So in this one, I put down the black and poured right into it, and then came in with some clear at the sides. Again, the black is down and then the gold on top. And if I flood the surface with the clear, I can really get that float off of the gold. Works really nice. Love my heat gun. And I'm just jumping all around on the canvas, pouring out those puddles and working them wherever I want to add some interest. Well, I just keep finding spots on this canvas that I want to get some more color on. This one really turned out super. I just love the way that the gold really pops up out from there, and then hitting it with the torch, it just fans out nicely. Some beautiful lacing in that one. This corner, I should have left it alone. What can I say? I overworked this area. I put way too much heat on here, and then I come back on top of that blue, add a little bit more of the golden black, and I got a real good scorch mark on my resin from that one, so should have left it be. I put this back at regular speed. I'm going to pour out some of that clear, and I'm doing that because I want to add some really nice wispy effects that are going to drift across that copper field on that spray painted background. So I'm putting the black in there. You can see it was so thick. I almost had to spoon it out of the cup to get it on there. And I'm going to warm it up with the torch and the heat gun. Blow it around a little bit. Try not to give too much heat on there. I don't want to scorch it like I just did on the other section. But if I come in at the right angles and keep that heat gun tilted, it's going to drive the resin, the black colored, and it gives some really nice wispy effects. See how those came out of there? I'll do the same thing over on this spot with the blue to try to tease out a little bit more. And once I blow it, I give a couple of blasts with the torch. So just to add a little bit more detail, I'm putting in some of those fine lines off of the pop stick. I just dip the stick into the black on the cup, and then I make my abstract lines through there. Here I'm going to put one more puddle down and get a little bit of that lacing, the gold in there for balance. And then I drag my pop stick through those lines to break them up a little bit. And one final hit with the torch, and that's it. It's getting covered up. All right, it's been 24 hours. I've come downstairs and removed my dust cover. And maybe you guys can see, I'm going to end up doing a second coat on this. You guys can see if I can get in closer for this and pick it up. Don't know if you guys can spot those. There's dimples on this, and that's because the resin was starting to cure and it was resisting moving. So it's kind of wonky. That's a good word, wonky. But here you can see really good. That was me trying to tease out some more effects in that corner, and it didn't like it. So that's what scorching, when you start scorching your resin, that's exactly what it can do. So because I was working this until really late, there's some dimples for me using my pop stick. I did put the heat gun there to try to get them to ease out, but they did not. So they're still there. Yeah, so there's some imperfections across this surface. Like I said, I'm happy with the colors. I like how they look on that background that I had done. I'll have to do a video for everybody so that you can see what I did to achieve that background. But in the meantime, I'm going to be doing a clear coat to fix those imperfections. So what I wanted to show you real quick, I'm going to batch up the resin that I'm going to use for my top coat on this piece. I'll be using the Clearcast 7000. It's a jewelry craft coating and casting resin. Really nice, no smell to it. Love the stuff. But I talked to you at the beginning of the video about weight on resin and measuring it. So I wanted to follow up with a little demonstration for you. This is my scale, and I like to get my measurements by using water in a cup. So the first thing I do is I'm going to be putting it into a cup. So I want to find out how much the cup weighs, right? So that cup is that weight, and then I'm going to zero it out. So it was 0.1. Now my scale is back to 0. So I've taken that out. I am finishing these bottles off, so I have a limited amount, and they are equal amounts in their cups. These cups are, you know, just cheap Walmart cups, and they have little ridges. You see those little ridges there on the sides, and they are very true. So they're all filled to the line right here. Oh, my scale just zeroed out on me. So let's do that again. Zeroed out scale. There's the weight of my cup. Zero it out again to take that out. Now I'm going to put my measurement of water on the scale. And it comes out at 3.4. Now I'm going to weigh my hardener. Oh, that's the resin. Here's the hardener. The hardener comes at 3.2. So the fluid that makes up the hardener weighs less than water. They're both at the same mark. Well, now that's 3.5. Before it was 3.4. 3.5. Okay. Hardener, 3.2. So you can see that the hardener weighs less than water. Now we're going to weigh the resin. The resin is very heavy. I can feel the difference just by picking up the cup. 4.1. That is a huge difference. This is why you cannot take one cup and measure out a cup by saying, okay, here's my cup. I'm going to measure 3 ounces of hardener and 3 ounces of this. It's not going to be equal amounts because you have to do it by volume. It must be done by volume. And volume doesn't mean by weight of each one because they weigh different amounts. That's the best way I can show you. Water weighs 3.5. Resin, 4.1. Hardener, 3.2. So each one, same level amount, each one is coming back with weight. So make sure that you measure your resin by volume. The resin is all mixed up, and I'm putting on my mask. I don't want to take any chances, and I let the epoxy sit for a little bit, and the bubbles will rise to the top. So the recommendation by the manufacturer is to let it sit and let those bubbles come to the surface. So that's exactly what I did. Now we're just going to pour that out across the surface. I'm going to use my plastic tool, which has a serrated edge. I'm going to spread that evenly across the surface and make sure I have good coverage. Use my fingertip glove to get it right to the edge. Quick torch. All right, and it's time to put a cover over top of it and a drop cloth to keep the dust particles out, and we'll check on it in the morning. Good morning, everybody. I'm heading downstairs to the studio, and there it is, still tucked in bed. So let's get that cover off and see how the clear coat layer turned out, all right? So I cover up my canvas to cure underneath this styrofoam panel that I bought. It's just a styrofoam insulation panel that I picked up at the Home Depot or Lowe's. I can't remember which one. They're really lightweight. I also use them at times when I'm packing out my art for shipping. And I use a really inexpensive plastic drop cloth, and it tucks it in there. I prop it up on a couple of cans of spray paint, and it keeps the dust out. Works good. All right. Well, from what I can see peeking across is I've got a really nice finish. Look at that. That's what I'm talking about. That is smooth. Look at the reflection. No wobbles. Well, there's like some kind of a wobble there, but I think that's, I'm not sure what that's from, but anyway, that is what it's about. Okay, it's gonna be a sunny day. I'm gonna take it outdoors and we'll get a really good look at it in the bright sunlight. The sun is shining and it is making this piece pop. Look at that gold and that blue steel. I'm really thrilled with the color combination. That blue steel has always been a tough one for me to work with, but in this piece, it is divine. Sorry about not recording my process on creating that background. I owe you all another video, and I'll be posting that soon. If you like what you see, please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please think about doing that. And also, I love hearing your comments about how I'm doing, so please don't forget to share those as well. If I can help you to learn more about resin art, just click on one of these links. It'll take you right to one of my other videos. And remember, have fun. See you next time on Moonkusser Art.